Excuse me, I'm now going to call this meeting to order. Whatever's going on over there, Councillor Bone. And okay, I call this meeting to order. Approval of the agenda, and moved by Councillor Sang, second by Councillor Hill, who looks like he's been on holiday, but you look like you've been on holiday. Oh, well, is there a difference? Any additions, subtractions, and concerns of, and we have an addendum. So it's approval of the agenda as amended. Okay? And so all those in favor? Passes. Confirmation of the minutes of February 28, 2019, Art Committee. Mover, Councillor Hill. Seconder, Councillor Bone. Any comments? Any problems? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's passed. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. Delegations, none. Briefings. Jacqueline Grimmin, Manager, Recreation Programs. Where is this person? Oh, they're hiding over there. Okay, very good. So you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the committee, here tonight to discuss and present the special events policy update. Been working on this since the council motion was presented in November. Have been working through the public engagement process and a review of other municipal policies to present quite a number of changes to the policy that we look forward to bringing forward and making some positive changes in terms of facilitating the event process. So certainly, as the chair mentioned, Jacqueline Grimmin, I'm the Manager of Recreation Programs with the city. So the Special Events Office, which was formed in 2014, facilitates both municipal events, so events like Canada Day, Victoria Day, the Kingston Sheepdog Trials Festivals, and a number of others. But we also work with external event organizers to assist them in facilitating their events in city parks and facilities. So certainly over the last number of years since the policy was revised in 2014, we've been working with all these different event partners and certainly recognize that there's efficiencies that can be found in terms of making the event experience better from the event organizer's perspective and as well from the event participants' perspective. And providing staff with more detailed framework in terms of working through applications and the approval of applications and placement of those events across locations in the city. So I'll take you through the policy update. Certainly, Derek has mentioned that I have my 10-minute window, and there's a lot of information here to take in this evening. So again, just mentioning the council motion, which came in November, and we certainly got started on the process right away when that motion came down. So public engagement began directly after in December. So we did start the process, by setting up a project page through the city's Get Involved platform, and worked through a number of different public engagement initiatives as per the city's public engagement framework. So those involved both in-person sessions and online opportunities for residents and event organizers to take part in. Those took place from December through to April of this year. We did receive some great feedback, which was incorporated into the policy update, again, as well as a review of other municipal policies. So there is a mention in both the policy and the report with regards to Queen's events. So we continue to work with Queen's to ensure that when they're facilitating either homecoming or orientation week events, that those are following certainly the same process as other events, and we're making considerations for the impact that those events have on our sites within the city. So taking you through the key updates of the policy, we have included a number of new subsections in the policy to address some of the items that have come forward from both council and the public in terms of finding more efficiency in the policy and the way that we review and approve event applications. So these are listed here, as well as a number of revisions to the existing information that was in the 2014 policy that we've kind of brought forward based on experience over the past number of years operating under the policy. So new in the policy update, we've included an event classification framework, and I'll be taking you through a number of those different areas in this presentation. So the purpose of this was to basically classify different events and understand that events of different size and scope certainly have different needs and need to be considered uniquely in terms of where they are located within the city and what resources and logistical needs need to be considered. So that event classification framework has been included in both the report and the policy. So those detail the special events, so a smaller scale event, a larger scale event where you would have attendance of 500 persons or more per day, and then what we're classifying as a mega event, so events with attendance that's exceeding 5,000 persons per day. So again, that including in the policy a new definition for large-scale events. So identifying that those have significant logistical needs, that they involve a number of departments from across the city. And we've included some examples of events that have taken place across the city that would fall under that classification of a large-scale event. So some of those being the Skeleton Park Arts Festival, the K-Town Kids Try, Art Fest, Women's Art Fest, and a number of others. So again, the mega events, including that classification and understanding that, that mega events certainly have a large impact when we are approving those applications and locating them within parks and facilities in the city. So an example of that would be the Tragically Hip celebration event, which ran in 2016, and certainly the upcoming Briar 2020 would likely be classified as a mega event as well. So I've mentioned logistics and the fact that large-scale and mega events would have more significant logistical needs. So in terms of the touch points within the different departments, those can include such items as sales licensing, permits for large-scale tents, parking considerations, washroom facilities, garbage pickup and removal, those types of items. So we understand that that large-scale and mega events certainly touch a number of these different areas, and there's more time that's required to work through an event organizer's application and the process of ensuring all those appropriate permits and licenses are in place to make sure that that event can be facilitated and regulated properly. So the Special Events Office has been working since 2014 as the central point of contact for event organizers. So previously, when an event organizer would come to the city, they would kind of just be left to connect with all these different departments on their own, and there wasn't kind of a central housing for the event organizer. So the Special Events Office has acted as the main point of contact and the liaison for event organizers. So if they do have questions or are looking for direction in terms of where to get specific approvals, or they may not be aware that specific approvals are required from different departments across the city, that's what the Special Event Office would assist in facilitating. So parking and transportation needs. So this is another new area of the policy that we've introduced. Certainly recognizing that that parking and transportation and the accessing of event sites can have a large impact on people's event experience, and we wanted to ensure that event organizers were making these considerations when applying to host events in the city. So we are working with these organizers to ensure that they're providing us with detailed transportation plans, parking plans, and they are coming up with strategies to ensure that they can communicate how people should be accessing their events when they're located in our parks and facilities. Certainly from a safety perspective, that's important to us, and we want to make sure that that the impact of events on sites across the city is managed accordingly, and that that people can both arrive and leave events safely. So certainly didn't want to reinvent the wheel. The official plan well designates city parks into 4 different categories. So previously this wasn't considered in terms of the special event policy. So we have introduced those classifications from the official plan in the special events policy, and just identified that that regional and citywide parks are appropriate for the hosting of large-scale events, and then the only parks that would be appropriate for hosting mega events would be regional parks. So further to that, we've included a list of those different sites, just so the committee can understand what sites that would include, and certainly understanding that there are a number of exemptions based on historic events and their success in some of these locations across the city. So you'll note that those are located in the policy update as well as the report. So again, the regional parks are listed for the appropriate location of mega events. So park usage limits is another area that we saw for improvement in the policy. It's something that we've discussed before, and something that has been brought forward to our attention based on the public engagement, and that the impact of large-scale and mega events can be significant to different sites across the city, and we wanted to consider that and make sure that that one site in particular or another wasn't being overloaded with all of the events. So as part of the update, we have included some usage limits suggestions. So for large-scale events, that a combined total of no more than 5 would occur from Victoria Day to Thanksgiving weekend. And then in terms of mega events, because of the scale and scope of those, those would be limited to 1 per location per year. So again, those totals for the large-scale events would be a combined total, so it wouldn't be 5 large-scale events in addition to a mega event. Those would be considered together. And again, in terms of a number of exemptions, we just wanted to identify that there are a few unique situations. So Portsmouth Olympic Harbor has been very successfully hosting the Cork events for a number of years, and that there are a few other areas that are managed by different policies, those including the First Capital Place policy, and then our sports field sites under the sports field allocation policy. So park resting, we've also included in the update to the policy. So this was something that we work closely with our Public Works Department on, and again, understanding the impact that these events have on our sites. We wanted to ensure that both from the perspective of the residents and making sure that there is that resting period in between events, and for the park to be able to rejuvenate as well. We have suggested a resting period of 10 days between any large-scale events, and then 30 days for mega events, given the significant scale of those. Again, some exemptions that we've included in the policy. The Fall Fair and Kingston Craft Beer and Rib Fest have historically been held as back-to-back events on the same site at the Memorial Centre, and the Cork events as well at Portsmouth Olympic Harbour. Amplified sound and noise concerns were definitely raised as part of the policy update. Those are things that we've identified in the new revision to the policy with some further language to assist in mitigating sound and the impacts to the locations and the surrounding neighborhoods at the different parks and facilities. So working with our partners in bylaw, we certainly have event organizers abide by the noise bylaw, but in addition, we've kind of addressed that by including some additional guidelines for event organizers to assist with the impact of sound at events. So that would include the location of speakers and certainly the communication of any events with sound that would impact a neighborhood within close proximity to a park. Application deadlines. We have introduced application deadlines into the policy update as a way for the Special Events Office to better facilitate the application and approval process for events. So certainly there is still the feeling that events can be considered after event deadlines on a case-by-case basis. But this allows the event office to holistically look at all the applications and evaluate those when determining the appropriate locations and considering the park usage limits and the number of other areas that have been updated as part of the policy. So we have introduced for large-scale events that those events need to be, the event applications need to be in by November 15th for events being held the previous year, or the following year, sorry, and 6 months prior for mega events. Just understanding that those will require more time in terms of permitting and connections with other departments within the city. So a note on the deadlines. Certainly, given the time that we've put into the policy update, we've been working with our event partners across the city to ensure that they can continue to facilitate their events for 2019. We have been working with them to ensure that different considerations that I've mentioned tonight can be considered and factored in as part of their process for hosting their event in 2019, but the actual deadline process would be implemented for events until the 2020, so November 15th of this year for events to be held in 2020. Special circumstances, we've included a clause in the policy to identify the fact that from time to time there are unique circumstances that come up and present themselves in terms of event opportunities across the city. So we have included this clause to represent the fact that we would make sure to communicate any requests outside of the policy framework to council by way of the director, and that the director may be able to authorize and execute large-scale and mega event applications on a case-by-case basis if there's special circumstances that arise. So the fees and charges, we have updated the fees and charges bylaw. That was part of the 2019 update. So we have included new special event fees for event classifications that break down the attendance that event organizers, that we've worked with them on. So for events with attendance of 250 persons or more, the fee breakdown changes, and we have recognized that there was a need to identify that events of small scale and large scale require different fee structures because of the impact to city resources and services. Insurance, a simple update to the insurance portion of the policy. So moving in the corporate practice of moving from $2 million to $5 million comprehensive liability insurance has been updated as part of the policy. So prioritization and benefits criteria, these were included in the previous policy, but we certainly recognize that we've been working through the policy for a number of years and identify that it's time to kind of look at those different criteria, and based on what we received in terms of public feedback and feedback through the focus group sessions, as well as review of other policies, we have updated and made some improvements to those prioritization criteria and identified the new criteria that's come forward. So certainly recognizing that we'd like to see events that align with the city's strategic plan, and that in terms of public benefits, we've recognized that economic impact also plays a role in terms of prioritizing and making an event more appealing in terms of an application process. So those are the items that are considered when we're moving forward and evaluating applications for the approval and location of parks and facilities across the city. So the public benefits and prioritization criteria, and as well as the insurance, those were previous areas of the policy that have been revised. They aren't new, but there are certainly elements that we've added to. So again, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity. We are looking forward to moving forward and bringing these improvements. Certainly, we see the need from both the staff perspective and the event organizer perspective to improve the process and to find efficiencies and assist event organizers to continue to offer the vibrant scale events that they've been providing throughout the city. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? I'll just start over here at Councillor Bohm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are just some questions that have kind of come up from a few people who have read the policy in the community. So the first one was around the idea that the special and the large would have to be decided kind of before November 15th, the year before, but yet there's sort of the rolling 6 months for the mega events, and that seems odd to me because it's much easier to throw together a special or large event with far fewer people, which you might throw together in, say, 4 or 5 months, but you may not know November the year before that you're even going to do that. So I'm just wondering, like, why would there not be sort of a rolling, you have to tell us 6 months ahead of time for those events too? Like, why would you have to know November 15th? Because I can tell you, for most people, November 15th of the previous year, they're probably thinking about Christmas, not what they're going to do in April or May of the next year. So what was the thinking behind that? Would it be possible to make that sort of a rolling period as well? Because the mega events has a rolling 6 months. And if you want to plan a mega event and you can do that in 6 months, it would stand to reason that with much larger, a special event, you could probably throw that together in 3 or 4 months. So I'm just curious what the rationale was there, and if there's the ability to sort of amend that.
There we go. It's fair. Certainly, we looked at other policies in terms of what application deadlines were out there. The feedback that we've received from event organizers that have historically hosted events in the city is that they typically have their event dates following the conclusion of their event date within the current year, so they would already be looking at their event date for the following year. And come the first part of the year, they like to have those dates firmed up so that they can kind of move forward. If there's exhibitors and things like that that they need to connect with, then they can firm up those dates. If there's advertising and things like that that they need to consider, then they can move forward and publish those dates. Certainly, we can consider things outside of that application period, and the policy does speak to that we would still consider events on a case-by-case basis. The mega events, the 6-month time frame on those, some of those are a little bit more unique in terms of they would come up and be identified that they're coming to the city, and we wouldn't kind of receive a full year cycle warning on those ones. So that's based on past practice where that application deadline came from.
Okay, I'm trying to just approach this the way that somebody in the community and a few people did this. They kind of just, they'll look at a policy and they read it and then they go, oh, I've missed the November 15th cutoff. And they'll never actually get to the point at the end of the policy where it says, well, case by case. So it's just, like, I guess I understand if it's an event that happens year after year after year and they're used to working through these policies and they've kind of got a team. But what I don't want, and I guess this is my fear, is that somebody that wants to throw together something new is going to have an idea in January, and then the first thing they're going to see is November. Oh, well, there's no point in holding that, and they're never going to get to the point in the policy.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So then the reason we're not including the deadline for this year is so that we can at least go through that cycle and review the applications. We're asking through the recommendation to come back to council with an information report on how things go. So by January of 2020, we'll have hopefully the applications, as Ms. Grimman indicated. The annual events are knocking on the door the day after the event happens. So we'd like to, and it has been consistent in other policies that we reviewed as well, is to have a deadline to hold our event organizers accountable as well, so that the event team can then evaluate based on what they know and plan accordingly, which includes the resting periods, the usage, and distribute the events across the corporation. And I think with the flexibility in 2019 not having an application deadline, we'll be able to get out and communicate the deadline itself for 2020 events and be proactive to make people aware, communicate it through our website so that it is in place. Certainly it's not the intention through the director's special circumstances approval that I want to be approving a single special event. That's not the intention. But we do want to put some of the onus on the event organizers to, and they are very good at being organized and having their house in order to promote their events and encourage people to come. We hear from the Rib Fest organizer literally the day after saying, I'm coming back. Here's the donations to the food bank. Here's the attendance number. So I think the applications are there to support staff to make decisions, but also to put a bit of onus on the organizers as well.
Okay, would it be then, because the special clause that later in the policy, is there any way that could be on the page with the deadline, so that if somebody has missed that and they go, okay, it's January 1st of the year, and they look at that November 15th, and then they go, oh, I've missed it, there's no point, they would understand kind of on that page, oh, there may actually be a chance here to still organize this event. Just because as soon as I read that, I'm like, oh, I've missed November 15th, I'm done for this year, and then the event just never happens. So there is, I like the fact that there's that special exception clause, but if it's too far on in the policy, nobody will ever get there. My second question would be, does this affect or include like sports events and tournaments that would kind of be part of our sports tourism, or is this just for renting the parks? Like, does this include, like somebody wants to host a big sports tournament in, I don't know, Grenadier Park or something like that, that's 1,000 people, then they have to go through this process as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the sports field and the ice allocation policies, they speak to the hosting of tournaments and events kind of separate from the special events policy. Okay. When the sporting event would kind of consume more than just a ball diamond or an ice pad. Certainly, we would work under the special events policy to facilitate those events and make sure that they, follow this process.
Okay. And then is their thought, because I saw at the end there and I just noticed that tonight, is the fees are for 250 or more are different, you said on your one slide, but yet from up to 500 is considered a special event, and then from that on is considered a large event. Is there any thought to harmonizing the 500? Like, why was it 250? Because that would be kind of a special, basically at 250, people are just gonna say, okay, it's a special event, but why was it 250? And then when it becomes a large event, it's 500 or more. Like why was the break 250 there, I guess, rather than just 500, kind of harmonizing it with the other large events?
Through Mr. Chair. Last year's fees and charges, the last attendance was identified as, like, the highest one was 250 plus.
Right.
So that also, that was including 500, 1,000, 200, 2,500. So this year we created 3 different categories on top of that 250 plus. So we consider that someone that would do a picnic in the park and have 200 family members coming out wouldn't qualify as a special event. That would simply be a park booking.
Yeah, and further to add, so there's additional increments above the 250. So
Yes.
We have breakdowns that go 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,500, and 2,500 plus. So there is incremental breakdowns to try and identify sort of the impact on the park, if you will. Right. We'll continue to review those rates as we move forward and refine the attendance numbers as our teams are more on the ground, because it is challenging. An organizer may tell us that there's only 250 people at the event, but there's actually 1,000. Right. So yes. we will reflect likely some changes in the fees and charges for 2020 that include even some additional event setup time versus event takedown time versus event operations, so that we can cater to each individual event, if you will.
Right. Okay, and just one final question. So after this kind of, I guess, change over years, there going to be sort of another round of consultation with everybody, sort of to do with how kind of the changeover worked and the new policy, just to kind of gather that feedback, which would then kind of recommend those future changes that you spoke of?
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, so we're including a comeback to council in January or Q1 of 2020, but we'd like to come back sooner if possible, as most of the events will be wrapped. Majority of our large events will be wrapped up by late fall, so that gives us a chance to get some additional feedback through the new process and application process and requirements for the event organizers to make potentially, if necessary, additional recommendations to the policy moving forward.
Right. Perfect. Thanks very much for your work on this. Thank you.
Councillor Hill?
Thank you. I have a couple for your presentation, first of all. And I do agree with Councillor Boehm about the wanting to, in particular for the large events, because some of those might be out-of-town folks, right, that may not know our policies. So I do agree that would be useful to put somewhere in a spot that people could see that there is some exceptions to that, because you wouldn't want people to just decide not to on the basis of that deadline. We have the I don't know if the poker run is coming up, but of course you're going to hear about that. I'm sure we're all going to hear about that in light of our climate emergency declaration. So is that one of the special events that's planned for this year at this point? Do you know?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we've certainly had meetings with that organizer in particular, and have been working on facilitating them through the same process in terms of the new policy update. So those prioritization and public benefits criteria would need to be considered in terms of approving that application. Certainly, they wouldn't be approved strictly based on historic fact. So we are still working with that event organizer on their intention to return to the city.
And I wonder if then, if there's a possibility that what could be incorporated into this is, because I'd hate to see us cut people off at the knees. You know, they've been a good supporter of us in terms of special events over the years, to suggest this might be an event, and I'm, you know, using this as an example, this is just hypothetical, but this might be an event that over the course of time may not be something that sort of fits with our priorities given our climate emergency, but that there be some policy that says, you know, we will allow this to continue for a prescribed period of time or a number of years before and so that we give the folks that are organizing these kinds of events an opportunity to reconsider where they might host them if Kingston decides that it's not a suitable host for those kinds of events. So I don't know if that could be a part of that at some point. And then my last question is, do you get many inquiries about whether or not we have a convention center, and do we lose a lot of business because of the fact that we don't have that facility?
Through Mr. Chair, we do, it happens that event organizers from the city here or from other municipalities come here.
Excuse me, that question is kind of out of order. This has to do with special events in the parks mostly. The convention center is a whole other item. There's a business case you can get a clerk and read up on it. Right now it doesn't pay, but okay.
Well, I guess my question was, this is about a special events policy. That would be a special events venue that we don't have. I'm just wondering if that's an issue for us or not.
Well, if there's a quick answer.
Yeah, through you, Chair, respectfully, if anyone were to call our special events team on that, we can direct them to Tourism Kingston. There is policy, and I believe I'm going back on memory on the new integrated destination strategy about opportunities for leveraging current assets in the downtown and other areas of the city for convention-like space, although we don't have a dedicated convention. So we're happy as a city team to work with our partners at Tourism Kingston to not cut those off right away and to provide opportunities to them. Thank you, Chair.
That's fine, that's good. Any more questions? Okay, we can talk about this later because it came up a term or so ago. Okay. Councillor Sanik.
Thank you very much for this
Just moving.
Oh, got it. Thanks very much for this policy and bringing this forward. And thanks too for doing that rest period in between events, because I know when we used to have Art Fest down here at Confederation Park, right, the grass would get really beat up, and I think it's important to have rest behind events. So we got an email today at 11 o'clock, and I see that you weren't on it, so I just forwarded it to you, but it's from the Women's Art Festival. And so they think that this policy will bump them out of City Park. And I don't really see that, but that's their big worry, and it's a really long email. And so they're really worried about section 3.6.1 and 3.6.2. And they think based on the ranking of prioritization, and I can't remember what 3.6.2 is, I think that's public benefit. Although I think Women's Art Festival, like, it is culture and art, so I think it would score as A, which is like the highest, but I don't know, do you see that they could be at risk? Like, I don't know if there's another event at City Park, and then, you know, how you have like that rest period being, can't remember for large events if it's 10 days, I think it's 10 days. Is there an event at City Park right now within that 10-day window? I'm not sure why they're worried that this policy, if we approve it tonight, can jeopardize their festival from being at City Park, unless you've had complaints about it being at City Park.
Through Mr. Chair, I met with the organizer of Women's Art Fest last Tuesday morning, Doreen Morey, and no, I don't anticipate any issues with Women's Art Fest continuing on at City Park, and we are currently working with her on providing her with a permit for 2019. She did raise some concerns about rumors and things she had heard, but we definitely do not foresee any issues with Women's Art Fest, and they do meet the prioritization and public benefits criteria.
Great, thank you. And the festival, that's in August, right? Like around August 16, like that each year? So we're talking about the right one, eh?
Sorry, yes, through Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct. It is in August, and there is no other events just before or after with the rest period that would impact them.
That's perfect to know.
Thank you, Councillor Neal now.
Thank you. You anticipated some questions I was going to ask in your presentation, and I thank you. I know there are certain things, and this is the former teacher in me trying to put everything in its right place in an edit, so it seldom happens, but I totally agree with Councillor Bohm about this. I think there's some other issues that if we put them on the related page. So when you have the stated exemptions for the rest rule, for instance, if that can be on the same page as the as that rule goes, and I believe there was another issue I had in mind that could fit that criteria. So I believe Mr. Falwell has something to say.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that is not the key piece of marketing material and promotion that we're going to certainly communicate to residents and organizers. We will be very clear on our webpage in terms of deadlines, opportunities for special circumstances, so that doesn't get lost or stuck at the bottom of the page. So that will be front and center so that people are aware of it. Because we anticipate similar types of inquiries happening. So we're hearing your feedback, and we'll make sure when that gets communicated on the city's webpage that it's very clear.
And I'm concerned about the bump up for insurance because we know when it first went to 2 million, not-for-profits, organizers lobbied council, and I think justifiably, saying that the insurance fee rates for that level would be problematic for them and cut into their fundraising, which is the primary, in some cases, their primary source. Now that we're moving to 5 million, I find that a little troubling. Is there a possibility of having two levels, like for-profit organizations, 5 million, but have a city, because we're self-insuring, have a city fee that would allow the 2 million to continue for the not-for-profits?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for the question. The city staff would not recommend a lower threshold of insurance than the 5 million. We've been working at managing this risk across all of our partners, including our not-for-profit tenants and various leases and licenses and other users of city facilities. It's something that is critical to protect the city's risk. We could have a look at alternative methods as part of the review for coming back in 2020, but I think at this point I wouldn't recommend to council, and I don't have our risk management staff or legal here, but to reduce this. It's been 5 million for a number of years, and we really need to bring this policy into that. And we're writing leases now that speak to the ability of going beyond 5 million in relatively soon future years, because we do expect that to be more the norm. So, but I think this brings it into the current policy, and we can have a look at alternative options for the future.
I guess my only concern is that, I mean, if it puts a not-for-profit fundraiser at risk because of the level of insurance. I don't want to go back to the crazy 90s when people lobbied a counselor and counselors brought motions forward to waive this fee or waive that fee. I think we've done a good job of creating a system that you administer and we set the policy for. But I could see counselors coming forward saying this is a really important event and therefore I'm going to move a motion to waive the fee or whatever. So.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have with our existing fee waiver policy to work with not-for-profit organizations, which could include some insurance costs which are related to city fees for facilities. So we have gone down that path with a number of our current event organizers that are in not-for-profit classification.
Thank you. And I just want to say this may not, the chair may cut me off with this question because it may be peripheral to what we're talking about tonight. But I have a concern. I totally support, the community supports the Thursday night Memorial Center where they have a enclosed beer tent for, on rare occasions, for the farmers market. I totally support the Rib Fest. But with the province, I'm presuming that our bylaws for alcohol consumption and our rules as they've been up until now aren't going to change regardless of what the province is saying. And that also may be a concern with the idea of tailgate parties. I doubt Queens will allow tailgate parties on their property, but have you given any of that some consideration?
For you, Chair. So immediately, no, there's no impact to this policy. We are reviewing all the changes coming forward from the province, and staff does plan to bring a report to council in the near future summarizing impacts and that sort of thing. And that you bring a good point. It could tie into the special events policy if council were to want to go down that road of tailgating and permissions and that sort of thing. But at this time, nothing changes with the law as I understand it, and it will be municipally based. So until something comes forward through council, nothing changes with our current bylaws.
And I tried to speed the list of the various events. A friend of mine organizes the Terry Fox Run. I understand it's moving from St. Lawrence to Lake Ontario Park. Is that the case? And will that then fall into that list that's that you've proposed?
Through Chair, I am not aware of the new location. They might not have submitted an application as of yet.
I'll talk to her too.
Okay, I'm going to ask a couple of questions and I'll go back to the committee. I've allowed long and rambling questions because it's hard to look at this policy and apply it to a particular, the examples, the cases that take place. I was wondering if you could bring up, there was a list, which we didn't get, of events there. We had a list of parks, but not the events that I could find. There we go. Nope, that's the parks, sorry. Yeah, large-scale events, yeah. If that's in the, you can tell me where it is. I think it's in there. But I checked with the clerk and I couldn't find it off the top. So anyway, so I just want to double check on a couple of things, like the Women's Art Fest. What I got out of that, you can tell me yes or no, is it's okay, it's not going to be bumped, it will be at the same time as it has been for the last 38 years.
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Good, thank you. And, okay, how to put this? I want to, I just find the insurance thing inflexible. okay? Like, I can't believe that all events, regardless of activity and size, are of the same risk. And I really think we should look at that, or pay it ourselves, okay? Because otherwise, I'm going to give you an example here where we have problems, and this came before council more than a couple of times, and that is, under this policy, how will you handle the initiation of an event like Art on the Wall? Because that had quite a difficulty getting going. It was very successful once it got going. And I can't see the November 15 or the insurance and as stated here. Now, I understand you have to have a structure. And I understand you would want to know about the big events before November 15th. Believe me, from an administrative and staff point of view, totally understand. But most of these things, like some of the ones, one of the examples Councillor Bowman was pointing to, and they don't happen like that. They don't get started like that. And it seems to me we need to have it turning over because things go out of style, things come in. And so how would you handle Art on the Wall? Because it didn't start, the first time it happened, it was like, was it 3 or 4 months, maybe?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that specific event, I was certainly involved with, along with our partners in culture. That's a little bit different because we had to waive some bylaw requirements in terms of our graffiti bylaw. So it had some additional elements to the approval process. And we've continued to work with the Friends of the Inner Harbor and provided a number of different annual fee waivers to cover insurance components related to the events. And I believe Council has also just recently approved the adoption of that going forward for this year as well. I think we continue to work with those individuals, and in respect to the deadline component, you know, we want to bring new events to the city, and one of the reasons for that special circumstances issue, if you will, is that we can work with them, and that ultimately the authority, if council and committee approves the policy update, then rests on my shoulders to make an educated and a strategic decision to help support and continue to make Kingston what it is in terms of the vibrancy that we have.
Okay, look, I'm not interested in criticizing anybody. I think it all worked out great, okay? Let's be clear where I'm coming from, okay? It was new. We didn't really know what to do at the beginning. We worked it all out, and councillors have to do something for their money, right? So I'm fine with that. It's my concern underneath, my underlying concern is with small to medium-sized community events. The big ones can look after themselves, largely. That's my observation. And so I just used Art on the Wall as an example. Could be something else I have no clue about. And then the special circumstances from this is a question, believe it or not, committee. It says we're going to handle these larger mega events but case by case. You know, from an administrative point of view, I get it, okay? I've administered too. So, but that's a hole that you put a transport truck through, right? They won't consider us under the special circumstances, you know? I can just see it. So I just want to know if in the things that I think are most important are the smaller scale community events, which have a tough time getting the right money and the right bodies together, and sometimes grow into big things, okay? So, but never mind that. They don't have to do that. And the availability of the parks to do that, I think one of the staff members mentioned a family picnic or something, or that's what came into my head. So those are the things that I hope this policy can look after. So I really support what Councillor Bohm said. You know, and I realize that's why it's there, because you want to be flexible, and I trust your judgment. That's not the point. The problem is this is going to come forward in January, thereabouts, and will this be a flexible enough, good enough, flexible enough, adaptable enough policy to deal with what really happens? Okay, at the same time, I know you're trying to keep these mega events like in some kind of structure, so you can not go crazy in May or something, right? I get that. So that's my question. My question about how do you handle art on the wall under this policy? And as Mr. Falwell said, and I trust his judgment, he'd take it into account. So all the more reason why what Councillor Hill and Councillor Bohm and Councillor Neal said, we have to have flexibility built in, and we have to show people that. So I don't know if you've got anything more to say. Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, it's certainly staff's intention to include some flexibility in the policy. And I think in where we're sitting right now for 2019 and going through the season and not having application deadlines and indicating that we are going to come back to council in early 2020, is that we'll have a very good idea as to certainly the input and applications for 2020 at that time. And if deadlines for special events is something that shouldn't be considered on the go forward in the policy framework, then that's a recommendation that we will remove because we don't want to add additional steps for staff to have to defend, you didn't meet the November 15th deadline. We want to make it as efficient for staff and for the applicants to proceed with events. And we continue to work with event organizers who are growing events. Another event that takes place in Doug Fleur Park is the Summer Solstice event. And we've worked with the organizers and provided fee waivers for that event in the past, and I believe we have an application for this year as well. So, we want to encourage those community events, and we want to give the organizers the tools in order to deliver them, so that the expectation doesn't ultimately rest on the city to deliver those types of community events. And we want to work with additional organizers across the city to deliver those events. There's an event in Kingston East that started to develop, going on its 4th year, that is growing and growing, which is great. So we want those to pop up across the city. I truly believe that the fee waiver policy has given staff the ability to help facilitate those without having to bring them back to council as one-offs. We do get very close to depleting that $20,000 annually, and we will likely be updating that policy in the next couple of years as well. But it's a tool that's working for staff and for event organizers in order to facilitate the events. It's not often that we're saying no. We do have criteria within that policy, and organizers work with us to move forward. So. I guess the biggest thing I want to say is the application deadline and updates is something that we're hearing certainly loud and clear tonight, and we'll make sure that it's communicated effectively, and it's not something that we want to hold against an event organizer. Certainly event organizers who have a lot of history in delivering excellent events in the city.
Okay, thank you. Actually, that was a good answer. And Councillor Bohm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. I can appreciate the complexity and everything of trying to make a policy and do that with all the consultation and everything. I guess for clarity on the website, would it be able to give an example of, I want to hold a barbecue and I want to invite 50 family members. What do I have to do? Like something like that. And I guess in that sense is I want to hold a barbecue, and then I read this policy or part of it, and then I go, I need $5 million in liability. I don't even know who to call for that. And then this is my fear is we have rules and policies so that they're followed and everybody's protected and everybody's safe and we can hold everybody to the same standard. But then the person just goes, well, I mean, what's really going to happen if I don't bother? And then they just go and hold the event. And then all of a sudden, the city's the bad guy because now they've got to come in with enforcement and say, why didn't you go through this? And then it becomes this feedback loop of, well, you go look at that policy, try to invite 50 people and figure out where to go. So are there, and maybe this is within the special events department, what mechanisms and everything will there be in place so that somebody that contacts a counselor or anybody else and says, hey, I want to have a family reunion in Grenadier Park. It's going to be 50, maybe 75 people. I don't really know. Let's say 75 or 50, somewhere in there. What do I have to do? And then in the grand scheme of things, the first thing that's going to pop to my mind is, well, you need $5 million in liability insurance. And right there, they're going to go, what? Well, who do I call? And I've had that question before. That's why I'm bringing this up. So.
Through here, so Ms. Rule and her team have developed and are finalizing an event guide. So it will step through the requirements of the application process. So whether it's a special event, a large event, or a mega event, it includes much more details in terms of the large and the mega events, in terms of contacts, what a traffic plan, what a parking plan, what shuttle service might look like, and all the responsible individuals. In terms of going to a park and having a barbecue, anyone can go and do that whenever they want. They're public places. But if you want to ensure that it's reserved for you, then that's what the park permit process is for. And through our booking software and our insurance provider, it's just another box that you tick if you want to purchase that insurance through our booking office. So we'll make sure that that's clear in the guide so that people can do it, so that it doesn't become overwhelming.
Right.
Because we want people to do that, and we know that people are certainly utilizing our parks in different ways now. We have a lot of new Canadians that are celebrating in our parks on a very regular basis. You drive around, there's large families that are gathering, 20, 30, 40 people, and they're proceeding without some of those requirements. But if you want a dedicated spot in a park, that's the booking process.
Okay, perfect. That's an awesome answer. Thank you. Just a question then. This has to do with the part on the complaints, and I guess where it specifies that the event organizer must reasonably attempt to follow up on complaints and everything. I guess the part reasonably is my question. How far are they expected to go? And if they hold an event and they go through all the special events process and everything, there's always going to be, it's human nature. There's always going to be somebody that you cannot please. It's not possible to please everybody. So how far is expected for some, I've held an event, I've gone through all the check boxes, and then I've got two people that just keep complaining and want to just keep escalating it, and I've done everything humanly possible and reasonable to try to address their concerns, and they're still adamant. So at what point would the city step in to kind of say, I guess in a sense, you're almost pitting, this is my concern, is you're almost pitting neighbors against each other in a sense. Because if I've run the event, I'm likely from that neighborhood, perhaps, and then I've got two people or one person that's just adamant they don't want anything held in that park. At what point do you say, well, you know what, they've tried to address your concerns, they've turned the speakers down, the event's still going to go on, and you tell that person that runs that event, listen, you've done everything you could. Like that person, you're not going to satisfy that person because there's always going to be somebody you can't please. And so that kind of just popped out at me because I can think of somebody coming to a counselor after going, I've tried to do everything possible to deal with this concern and I still can't solve it. So what do I do now? So it's just something we're probably going to get. So what would be your advice there and how would the policy speak to that?
Mr. Chair, so certainly within the Special Events Department, our intention is to work a lot closer with the external event organizers with regards to their event and certainly having more presence with their events. We've also been working closely with the other departments within the city so that if there are concerns that come up that kind of extend beyond what the event organizer can address, potentially parking issues, different things that would fall under the purview of specific bylaws. Those departments within the city have certainly identified that they would be willing to assist in that regard and kind of step in so that the event organizer, once they deal with things to a certain degree, that can be followed up as well from a staff perspective if needed.
Okay, so there is like an escalation procedure, sort of, if somebody's done everything they could, there's a level that they could go to. Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Not seeing any. I will go on to the next item. Item 7, business, which, lo and behold, Part A, special events policy update. Somehow I thought this would work out. Do we have any any questions? I doubt it. So if there's anyone in the public who has a comment or question, please come to the mic.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Frank Dixon, Williamsville resident. So I want to start by thanking staff for very thorough work on the report and an excellent presentation tonight. It's one of the best I've seen. And some excellent points from the committee. I'm not going to repeat some of the ones I have, but I do have some that are maybe not quite dealt with as well. So I'm wondering, you're speaking of the Queen's University events, and you do reference the AMS in there, but there's another student organization for grad students. It's the SGPS, or Society of Graduate Professional Students. So they may want to hold events as well, so maybe add them to your contacts. And also St. Lawrence College, they probably hold a lot of events on their campus, but they might want to use city parks or facilities as well. And I didn't see anything about them in there, so just widening that out a bit. I think that the recycling efforts for the larger events that are held on city facilities have room for improvement. I know this has been discussed at the EITP committee, which is dealing with recycling. So there's sort of an interface there between the two. I live near the Memorial Center, and it's the site of large events such as, say, the Fall Fair and Ribfest, and there's a lot of garbage around sort of during and after those events. So I'd like to see some attention paid to that aspect there and elsewhere. I just want to talk a bit on the insurance, which was raised by members of the committee. And I understand where staff's coming from. You want to recommend you sort of have the risk limited as a corporate citizen and organization. And the councilors are wishing to have the small and medium-sized community events take place. So I'm just wondering, have there been any claims made against the city for mishaps which have occurred during events that are on city property? Because if there have been, then that would be a reason to want to have a higher coverage level, and then that would be a higher premium as well. So I'd be in favor of the city trying to absorb that cost as a way of, I guess, enabling the smaller events that don't have a lot of cash flow to make their events a success. So I'd also like to see something in the way of an annual report created. Certainly the Special Events Office, formed in 2014, it's proven to be a big success that you did that, right? Because you're creating structure in and around this, you produce this great policy, you checked with other cities, right? It's all fantastic work. But in terms of a report produced annually on the events that have been held in the various locations and how many people they attracted, I'm just wondering if you're doing that, or if not, then if that could be considered as part of the work, just in terms of creating a structure and reporting policy. I'm just wondering also where something like the annual festival for buskers would occur. I didn't see it on the major events, but I think certainly is one. It's using parks and streets, right? Okay. And I guess just one sort of final point. The Tragically Hip concert that was held at the then K-Rock Center and then the crowd in Market Square is one thing, but we also had a Tragically Hip concert a number of years before that took place on the LaSalle Causeway, which is federal property. So would that classify as a major event, or is it in a different category because it's a federal property? The city would have had to support that in various ways, right? So, and then I guess my final point is with the noise, okay? There were a couple of engineers sitting across the hall from me, and noise is something that's actually measurable from a physical standpoint. If you have speakers that are generating music and so forth, and then that's carrying, and then the wind is carrying it further, if you actually measure the dB attenuation on that as a way of, say, understanding if it's really a problem. And this came up on the West Campus where they had a lot of activities with amplified sound on sports events. The sound is coming into neighborhoods, right? So whenever we did measure that, I asked for it didn't happen. So I'd like to see it as a way of producing...
30 seconds,
okay,
please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Producing some sort of measurable standard. Okay, well, you can play music that's this loud, but if you go higher, then that's not acceptable. And you've got a device that can actually do that. So thanks for my points, and again, thanks for the good work.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? Not a lot of choices here. Would one of the staff members like to stand in for citizen duties? You are all citizens. So now I would like a response from staff, if anyone got the notes on that, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the comments. We will work with other departments on a number of those different items that you discussed. Certainly, in terms of sound, our enforcement team manages the noise bylaw, and those are considerations that have been incorporated into the policy that we've consulted with them on. So the recommendations that we've brought forward in terms of the policy update have been informed by that group. And certainly they have identified that they would be supportive if there are any issues with sound and in terms of facilitating any exemption requests that need to come forward to council as part of special event applications. The LaSalle Causeway event, I'm not entirely familiar with. Certainly, if the event is happening in a city park or facility, the special event policy through the classifications noted under the official plan would kind of assist us in permitting specific events. And again, if they are outside of that, then we would look at the special circumstances clause to address that. In terms of the recommendation for this evening, it is our intention to bring forward an annual report with regards to special events as a bit of a progress update. So appreciate that feedback, and that's something certainly that we'll be moving forward with. As I believe Director Falwell mentioned, that will come later this year once we've done the cycle of the 2019 events. And the buskers event, so we did note in the policy that there are some exemptions around the First Capital Place area where that event would take place. So that's an event that would fall under that specific exemption. Hopefully I've answered your questions there.
Thank you. So we come back to the committee. I will read the motion, and we'll see if we have a mover and a seconder. Just want to read it first. That the Arts, Recreation, Community Policies Committee recommend to Council that the amended special events policy attached as Exhibit A to report number ARC CP-19002 be approved and implemented, and that staff report back to Arts, Recreation, Community Policy Committee by the end of Q1 2020 with an information report to provide an update on events from 2019. Do we have a mover, Councillor Bohm, and a seconder, Councillor Hill? Any comments from the committee? None. I'll take the vote. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. And that's the end of that item. So 7B, report received from the Arts Advisory Committee. The Arts Advisory Committee reports and recommends as follows from the Arts Advisory Committee meeting on April 11, 2019. So the first one is Part I, or Part 1, appointments to the Public Art Working Group that Arts, Recreation, Community Policies Committee recommended the Council that Camille Georgeson, Usher, Henry Hang Liu, Jocelyn Purdy, Genevieve Flavel, and Lynn Kenny be appointed to the Public Art Working Group as community members. I'm just going to go on. I'm going to do 2 and 3 too, okay, unless somebody sticks up their hand, okay? Number 2, appointments to the Local Music Working Group. The Arts, Recreation, Community Policies Committee recommend to Council that Dean Burry and Laura Chagnon, community member, be appointed to the Local Music Working Group. Part 3, or number 3, Mayor's Arts Awards Nominations Working Group, committee and community members. The Arts, Recreation, and Community Policies Committee recommended Council that Councillor Doherty, Andrea Sippersad, and Sarah Zhang be appointed to the Mayor's Arts Awards Nominations Working Group. Just make sure. And that's it. So, do I have a mover? Councillor Hill, seconder, Councillor Neal. Any comments? Councillor Neal, something.
Just one very question for Danica, if I can. We did a previous appointment to the Local Music Working Group, right? So this is in addition to that. Good, thank you.
Yes.
I didn't think I missed it. So.
Okay, so motion's on the floor. We don't go to the public in this instance. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. It's passed. Next item is number 8, motions. There are none. 9, notices of motion. Seeing none. 10, other business. 11, correspondence. 12, date and time of next meeting. The next meeting of Art Committee is June 27th, 2019. And the 13th is adjournment. May I have a motion for adjournment? Councillor Hill, seconded by Councillor Lasanic. All those in favor? It's passed. Meeting's over.